Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome, everybody. It is time for the Books That Make You show. My name is Desiree Duffy, and I'm your host. And this is a very special episode of the show because we're talking about your TBR. That's your to be read list. Now, this time of the year, as we get ready for new beginnings, a lot of us bibliophiles like to put together our reading list. We curate them and we plan them and we strategize them and we come up with new exciting books that we may have never even dreamed of reading before. Or in some cases, we might be reading book 2 or 3 in our favorite series. And you know what I really love to do, and I encourage every reader and writer to do, is read outside your genre. Find new inspiration and new books and authors that you may have never even considered before. When you're putting together your TBR, you get the opportunity to really explore not only other books and other authors, but you get to explore a little bit about yourself too. Okay, now our TBR list isn't necessarily the same exactly as what yours is going to be. Everybody should put together their own. And the show is designed to help give you a few ideas. We've compiled our own TBR list, and you can also find this list on the Books That Make You website. So if you want to see this and read more, not only about each of these books, but find out more about these authors, many of them can be found on the site. And some of them you're going to recognize as well because they've been guests on the Books That Make You show. So don't forget, go to booksthatmakeyou.com and you can find this reading list and so much other information about books and authors. So without further ado, let's dig into your TBR list recommendations from your friends at Books That Make You. We're going to start with a favorite of mine. I think this author got me into reading more than any other author back when I was a tween, teenager, even a young adult, and that is Stephen King. His latest book is called Fairy Tale. Now, if you're in the mood for something that harkens back to the Stephen King that you might remember as well from your childhood, this book nails it. It actually reminds me a lot of The Talisman, which he wrote in conjunction with Peter Straub many, many years ago. In this book, we have a young protagonist and his dog that ends up going to a parallel type world universe, and it's the ultimate battle between good and evil. So the first book on our TBR list is Fairy Tale by Stephen King. Now, another book that many of you might be familiar with, or an author, I should say, that you might be familiar with. Now, and check this out too. So when we talk about having a TBR, okay, I got to lift this up. When we talk about having a TBR, we're talking about stacks, old books, right? I just wanted to lift up my stack. And this isn't even the entire stack. This is just a sampling. I couldn't fit every single book in front of me here. But okay, the second book on our list is from author Virginia Fox. Now, she is a best-selling author in the German language market, and her books, the Rocky Mountain Romances, are now here in the US. And if you love diving into a series and you want something that's cozy, romantic, with just a little bit of suspense and some characters you're just going to absolutely fall in love with, then these books are for you. Now, this is book number 1 in the Rocky Mountain Romances series. This is Rocky Mountain Yoga. Book 2, which is Rocky Mountain Star, is already out. Book 3, 4, and 5, they're all coming out in early 2023. So this is the perfect time to start with Rocky Mountain Romances, book number 1. Do you guys do this? Do you see this? I know some of you are listening. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the little tab that I put in my book. I like to mark pages. and excerpts that I love. And towards the end of this show, I'm going to read a little bit to you from some of these amazing books because I want to give you just a little taste of what's going to be in store for you. Number 3 on our TBR list from Books That Make You is Always a Princess by Clive Rose. Yeah, this is another one I've got on hand. And you know Clive. She's been a guest on the show many times. Now, the reason I'm suggesting that you read this book, if you haven't already, Always a Princess, is because the sequel is coming out in early 2023. So if you're a fan of Regency romance and Clive Rose and escaping to that time when things were kind of prim and proper, but a little bit scandalous and just kind of sexy and fun, then grab your copy of Always a Princess by Clive Rose. You will not regret that. Okay, the next book on our list is called The Ghost in Her. Now, this one is coming out January 3rd. So check the calendar to see if you can grab your copy of The Ghost in Her, which is by Annika Savoy. Now, this book combines romance, supernatural elements, the paranormal, and heavy, very well researched doses of historical fiction. The Ghost in Her is the first book in the Ungilded series. So if you're looking for a new series to dig your teeth into, and you like that historical, romantic, but kind of creepy and supernatural type of a book series, then The Ghost in Her, book 1 in the Ungilded series by Annika Savoy, is absolutely for you. The next book on our list is poetry. Now, during the winter months, a lot of times being able to escape into verse is exactly what we need, right? The Poetry Showcase from the Horror Writers Association is the book that I'm going to recommend to you. Now, if you like things that are just a little bit dark and creepy, but also just set in verse, then the Poetry Showcase is for you. Every year, the Horror Writers Association puts this together. And we've talked with several of the contributing writers to the Poetry Showcase. And they collect submissions and they compile them into the showcase. So in a lot of ways, you're getting the best of the best. And this is something that you can buy year after year and collect this entire edition because it continues on and on. So check that out. And also make sure you check out the Horror Writers Association. It's a great organization to be a part of, especially if you're a reader or a writer in the world of horror and mystery and suspense and creepy things that go bump in the night. The next book I'm going to recommend to you. Now, this book has been out for quite a while. This is Double Blind by Sarah Winokur. And similar to what we were saying with Clive's book, the reason I'm recommending it is because book number 2 is coming out in 2023. And both books are standalone, so don't worry if you read one before the other. It's okay. But in the second book, you're going to be introduced to many of the same characters that you've met in Double Blind. Now, this is a Nordic thriller. Think Stieg Larsson and The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, or the TV show Fortitude. Yeah, it's set in Iceland, and it involves these ancient manuscripts and a researcher who does DNA research, and just so many twists and turns. It's absolutely a delightful mystery thriller that you're going to love sinking your teeth into. Speaking of thrillers, cli-fi or climate fiction thrillers are very much in vogue nowadays because, well, quite frankly, we really need to do something about the climate crisis. But in the meantime, there are authors like E.A. Smeraldo who are raising awareness through fiction. Now, she as an author is a nuclear engineer. She knows exactly what she's talking about. This book is premised on something that is actually plausible, changing weather patterns with a nuclear weapon. Yeah, we start talking about some really scary stuff here. The cool thing, though, about her take on this is it's not only great storytelling and really interesting and thought-provoking, but tongue is inserted in cheek in a lot of ways. It's kind of a dark comedy in many ways, something that I know you're going to love. This is The Silent Count, which is also on our TBR list here at Books That Make You. Okay, something for the kiddos, right? Because we gotta have at least one book for them on your TBR. And we picked Stephen Joseph's Snoodles, Kidoodles, Poodles, and lots of noodles. This is on the reading list because it is not only fun for the kiddos to read, but for adults to read. And yes, I've marked a page and I am going to attempt to read a tongue twisting passage from Stephen Joseph's book a little later on. So that's something that you definitely do not want to miss. No TBR would be complete without something that's going to help lift us up from a personal, professional, or our own lifestyle point of view. Mindless Behaviors is just one of those books. This is a book that you read and you just gasp because it manages to almost instantly change your life. When you realize that you've been wearing these masks and hiding from a lot of realities and truths, not only to the outside world, but to yourself, it is life changing. Mindless Behaviors is by Beatrice Adonati. And this is just an amazing book. And the cool thing is, look, this is a quick read, and she tells many fabulous allegorical stories. A lot of them are based on true stories, too, in her book, Mindless Behaviors. So many readers. This is a theme that we have quite often on the Books That Make You show. So many times when we're readers, we turn around and we want to become writers. I don't know of any other profession that quite does that. It's not like one day you need to call the plumber because the sink is backed up and you're like, oh my God, plumbing is so cool. I want to become a plumber. Okay, maybe some of us do that because plumbing is kind of a cool thing. But when we read, when we fall in love with books, there's often something that tugs at us, our own inner creativity, our own storyteller abilities. And I believe that deep down inside every single one of us, because that's what makes us human, every single one of us, no matter who you are, where you're from, no matter what you are, we are all storytellers. Now, in Deborah Levine Herman's book, Spiritual Writing, From Inspiration to Publication, she addresses not only the writer's journey, but more specifically, the spiritual writer's journey. Because quite often, that call to write feels like it's something greater than ourselves. It feels like it's coming from somewhere else. So her book is the perfect book to read if you've thought about writing yourself, even if you're not necessarily a spiritual writer. Her vast experience in the industry, she's been a literary agent and she's a publisher and she's an editor. She's an expert when it comes to memoir writing and so much more. So her words of wisdom are going to help you whether you're a spiritual writer or not. And I think a little later, I got one of those pages marked for her. We'll read a little excerpt from spiritual writing, from inspiration to publication. Now, one of the things that drives us more than anything else in the world is this, when we're reading books, is a desire to make ourselves and the planet a better place. Escape the Matrix is a book by Stuart Waldner, and this book hit the presses, boom, as a bestseller. In it, he asks the readers to, hey, take the red pill and go down this rabbit hole, so to speak, of what this matrix is all about. And by matrix, he's talking about the meat industry, the factory farming. He's talking about all of the things in our lifestyle, our choices that we make that can be made so much better. We can, he claims, become healthier and happier when we adapt a more plant-based lifestyle and escape the matrix. One of the things that, and Stuart's been a guest on the show, so go back and listen and watch his show too. One of the things that just impressed upon me so much when talking to him is when he started saying, think of all the marketing slogans over the years. Some of the biggest and best campaigns have been centered around meat. And that is not an accident. When you start realizing the control that the meat industry has and the way they influence us through their advertising and marketing slogans, it's one of those moments that it just makes you shiver. And that is why Escape the Matrix is such a poignant book. For example, we've all heard of this one, right? Got milk? Probably one of the most famous marketing slogans ever. Or beef? It's what's for dinner. Pork? The other white meat. The incredible edible egg. The list goes on and on. So once you go down the rabbit hole with Stuart Waldner and his book, Escape the Matrix, you might not ever be the same. And you know what? This is one of those books that you're going to be so grateful you read, because trust me, that may very well be a good thing. On the list of memoirs that I feel you need to read, and this gentleman has more memoirs coming out. So now is the best time to grab your copy of From the Potato to Star Trek and Beyond by Chester L. Richards. Chester is a man of adventure. That's the through line. That's the common theme in his writing. And his memoir, this first one, I should say, as well as the forthcoming ones, are a collection of stories from his life. And they're all centered around the amazing adventures he's had. And the title of the book, it always, trust me, it always grabs people's attention. We had this book at the Los Angeles Times Festival of Books last spring in our booth. And people are like, what is up with the potato? So when I read this little bit of an excerpt, I'm going to give you just a hint as to what that potato is all about. And I'll tell you right now, the Star Trek is because he co-wrote the Tholian Web, which is one of the most famous, or from the original Star Trek series, one of the most famous episodes ever. So this is definitely something that you're going to want to have on your TBR if you're a memoir lover, or even if you're not. This is a good foray into the world of memoirs, because trust me, reading somebody else's life story just gives us so much more perspective about our own, and it broadens our horizons. Speaking of memoirs, I'm going to also put on our TBR Will by Will Smith. This is by far one of the memoirs of the year. It's a highly regarded book, and it really digs into Will Smith's journey of self-discovery, the decisions that he made that showed where and how he got to where he is. I remember way back when he was a rapper, and then he got that big break doing the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and everything just snowballed in some of the most fantastic and most intriguing ways. So I have to recommend Will by Will Smith on the Books That Make You TBR list. And one more that I'm going to add here at the end before I dig in and start reading a few excerpts for you is It Ends With Us. This is a novel by Colleen Hoover. And this is a New York Times bestseller in the contemporary category, or the category of contemporary women's fiction. And it has moved readers all around the world. In it, the protagonist, Lily, falls in love with a man who she did not intend to start a relationship with, which is why so many good books start off with that premise. And then guess what? Of course, she starts to understand why. It Ends With Us is definitely a book that you want to check out this year for your TBR. Okay, we got about 10 minutes left. Excuse me while I clear my throat. Take a drink of some hot cocoa. That's what I got in there. Perfect to read during this time of the year. And perfect to read as I dig back through my stack when you're reading something cozy and warm like A Rocky Mountain Romance from Virginia Fox. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. I'm going to read Just a little snippet for you. Jasmine kept her eye on the gun as she stroked Rambo. Her hands were shaking with exhaustion as well as fright. Maybe it was just as well if the sheriff showed up. At least she could get this woman out of Grandma's house. She thought lovingly of the homeopathic remedies she had in her car. A few drops would calm Rambo's stress and hers. She summoned up all her courage for one last attempt to clear things up. She extended her hand in greeting. We haven't even introduced ourselves yet. I'm going to leave that right there. In this book, the doggo Rambo, I think, is going to capture your heart. And you are just going to love, love, love being introduced to Jasmine and her whirlwind romance with Jake. Once again, that's book one, Rocky Mountain Yoga in the Rocky Mountain Romances series by Virginia Fox. Okay. I'm gonna stay within the world of romance because I wanna read just a little snippet from Always a Princess by Clive Rose. There, we got the cover right there. Always a Princess, Clive Rose. Will kept his eyes shut tight against the needle-sharp pain at his temple. Someone was moving about his room. The susurration of pouring water, the rustle of cloth on cloth, and an occasional rattling pierced right through the fiendish agony behind his eyelids. The perpetrator of these multiple assaults on his delicate sensibilities deserved a whipping at the very least. Peering ever so slightly out of one eye, he surveyed his blurry surroundings. This wasn't his room. If you want to find out where he is and what's going on, then you got to grab your copy of Always a Princess. Okay, I promised you that Double Blind by Sarah Winokur is going to be something that you're going to want to read because of the fact that she's got book 2 coming out in 2023. Let me just introduce you really quick as to the reason why. You ready? From the top floor of Legacy Genetics, Brynja watched the morning sun dance across Reykjavik. Probably mispronouncing that. It's Icelandic. What can I say? The tumultuous skies of last night's storm had given way to an alabaster dawn that slid down snow-capped Mount Isja and breathed a purple mist across the bay. A good omen, she thought. Sarah captures the essence, the atmosphere of Iceland. So you might just need to look up the pronunciation of some of the words in it, or you just kind of glaze over them like I do. I heard that Icelandic is one of the most difficult languages to pronounce, so hopefully you'll have a little bit of mercy on me. But again, that's an amazing book, something that you definitely want to pick up, especially if you're a fan of mysteries and thrillers. Okay. And again, I'm going to just keep in that theme. Mystery and thriller lovers, especially if you want something that's in the realm of cli-fi or climate change fiction, then The Silent Count is for you. And I'm going to read a really short excerpt here because it just grabs you so hard. Some said the world would end in fire. Others said it would end in ice. We know better now. The Silent Count. E.A. Smeraldo. Must have on your TBR. All right. You know it's coming. It's the tongue twister because I've got Stephen Joseph's book. It's Snoodles. You do it this way. Snoodles, cadoodles, poodles, and lots of noodles. Got through it. And one of the things I have to point out too, you can see here, is the illustrations by Andy Case are just amazing. Here, let me flip through just a couple of the pages really quick. And if you're listening to the show and you have no idea what this looks like, this is a reason why you should check us out on YouTube and watch the show as well, because I do things like hold up books and you can see the beautiful pictures, the beautiful artwork. Here we go, okay? Getting my tongue ready for this one. With the success of Snoodlemobile, Mr. Snoodleman was able to amass a great fortune. With this great fortune, not only did Mr. Snoodleman open up many Snoodle shops, but he also opened up the Snoodle Cadoodle Noodle Art Museum, the first art museum that displayed solely noodle art. And there you go. Again, highly recommend this book for parents and kids. And it's got lots of messages too, undercurrents of, being a better human being, helping with the environment, and so much more. Now we're going to go on to mindless behaviors. I'm going to read just a little bit from the beginning because I want you really to understand what Beatrice means by mindless behaviors. And then, like I said, there are so many great anecdotal type stories that have a lesson framed around them. So really quick, let me just tell you in Beatrice's own words from her book, what are mindless behaviors? The term mindless behaviors applies to two things. The first are deeply ingrained behavioral patterns that can be barriers to personal growth, enabling bad behavior, living with masks on, and so on. Mindless behaviors is also a social experimental platform that strives to build community around these behaviors. And I'm telling you, once you understand that and dig into her book, your life is going to evolve. It will not be the same. Another life-changing book, a life-changing person, actually. And I got to add, too, that Deborah Herman has written many best-selling books. She knows books, the industry, craft, inside and out. And in her book about the spiritual writing from inspiration to publication, she talks about this calling that many writers have, especially those spiritual writers. Okay, so here we go. I want to say it in her own words. The calling to write can be a blessing or the bane of your existence. Some of us are driven to write as if we're on life or death missions, and others write as easily and naturally as we breathe. Some of us have no idea why or how we have followed this path. There are certainly easier ways to make a living. Many other careers that do not require machoism or masochism or guaranteed rejection. I have often thought that medical science should recognize a common mental disorder called writerphrenia. Writerphrenia. The obsessive need to remove oneself from reality and human condition for hours. Writerphrenia is characterized by coffee drinking, snacking, hair twisting, hand wringing, and poster or email paranoia. I have seen people, admit it, it was me, who pray and hold ceremonies over manuscripts before placing them in the hands of the U.S. Postal Service or hitting attach and send. Those are Deborah Herman's own words in her book, Spiritual Writing from Inspiration to Publication, a must read if you are not only a spiritual writer, but somebody who is about ready to embark on their own writing journey, period. And the last one, the piece de resistance from our TBR list for 2023 from your friends at Books That Make You is just a little bit of a taste of that potato, that provocative potato, the potato that graces the title of this amazing memoir by Chester L. Richards, The Potato. This is from that chapter in his book, which is just interwoven with so many different wonderful adventurous stories. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble. Okay, yeah, that's Shakespeare. An accurate description. Something the young devil definitely did not like, especially the bubble part, for at this point the task got deadly dangerous. Printer's devil was one of those unsung pivotal occupations upon which our entire civilization once turned. Like Macbeth's witches, this kind of devil is rapidly receded into the mists of history. In my youth, I was a printer's devil. like my father before me, and likely his father as well. For my grandfather, too, was a printer, and printers learned their trade in the time-honored way. Fathers teaching their sons how to do things. Well, that ought to give you a hint as to what that potato is all about. Thank you, friends, for joining us on this very special edition of the Books That Make You show, talking about your TBR, your to be read list. Let us know what books you're reading this year. And don't forget, you can always find out not only about these books that we've talked about today, but all sorts of books coming in this year and beyond when you visit our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com. Sign up for our Webby Award-winning newsletter as well, because there you will be kept up to date. Delivered every month into your inbox will be the newsletter with articles and stories. You'll be able to catch up on all your episodes of the Books That Make You show. Don't forget, if you're on YouTube, or even if you're not, next time you go to YouTube, make sure you subscribe, hit the button, comment, do all of that stuff. It really helps with our engagement, and it helps get the word out about the Books That Make You show. You can also follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and on Facebook. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.